What's up, guys? Ronnie Kelly. I'm former Lake Fork fishing guide, no longer a professional fishing guide, but I still fish a lot. Here with Billy Lawson today, and wanted me to take some time to talk to you guys about deep cranking. Deep cranking is probably my favorite way to fish. Not necessarily my biggest strength, but by far one of my most favorite ways to fish. In my opinion, there's not a better way to catch big largemouth year round, really. I mean, I throw a deep crankbait from January to January. We're going to focus today on how I fish a big crank during the summer. And so Lake Fork is kind of my home lake. I fish Lake Tyler, fish Lake Palestine. I've got a lot of experience going down south on Lake Falcon, which is, for you guys that have been down there, it's unbelievable. It's one of the best, if not the best, it's one of the best big fish factories in the country, and it's definitely one of the best crankbait lakes in the country. So I want to talk to you about my setups and what I'm looking for and kind of what I do and why I think it's such a good tactic for big fish. So to start off, let's talk about rod and reel. So I'm going to throw a fiberglass rod. Okay, there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of different opinions about this. My opinion is, do I feel more structure down bottom? Can I feel the bottom better? Can I feel cover, and can I feel road beds? Can I feel shell beds? Can I feel gravel better with a graphite rod? Absolutely, yes I can. There's no doubt about it. It's more sensitive, doesn't have as much flex in it. Similar to fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon isn't as sensitive, or excuse me, fluorocarbon's more sensitive than monofilament because of the lack of stretch in fluorocarbon. Same thing with graphite. Graphite's a lot more sensitive. You feel a lot better with that crankbait. The deal is, though, when I'm fishing a crankbait, I'm trying to catch really big fish. I'm trying to catch fish, but I'm also talking about the crankbaits that we're going to talk about today. I'm trying to catch big fish. I'm trying to get down deep, throwing a big 18, to 25 foot deep diving crankbaits. These are some 6 cents Cloud 9s, 25 and 15. You can see these things right here. And that rod, this particular rod I'm throwing has got a lot of graphite in it, and then about the last 2 or 3 foot of it, it's got a lot of fiberglass, and it allows that rod to bend. You can see up there where that fiberglass kind of blends in. And basically, guys, the deal is that crankbait's already moving pretty fast. You figure I'm throwing all of my crankbaits on a 6-to-1 reel. Some people will throw a 5-to-1. I think that's great. I don't think you need a 5-to-1. If you're throwing these big C25s or like a Strike King 10XD or something like that, a 5-to-1 might be okay. If you're wanting to throw a bigger line, I generally throw about 15-pound fluorocarbon. If I needed to if I'm cranking trees and I'm catching a lot of big fish at Fork or Falcon or something like that, I'll go up to 17. I prefer 15. I don't really think there's a reason to have more than 15. Used to, I would throw a lot of 12 on like something bigger than a DD22 but smaller than like a Cloud 9. I'd throw a 12-pound line to kind of get it down. This point in time, I just don't have to do that with technology and these really big build small body crankbaits like 6 cents makes right here. I can throw 15-pound line and still get this down to 16, 18, 20 foot of water. So on the rod, I'm throwing one with fiberglass. I can't feel the bottom as well. You just can't. You're not going to be able to feel the shell, the gravel as well. You can still feel it, and you can still fish it effectively. I think most of the professional fishermen in the world are going to opt for some kind of a fiberglass or a composite type rod when they're throwing a big crankbait. And again, the reason is this bait's moving really, really fast. These bass a lot of times will slap at it and won't just engulf it. And so you've got 6 hooks, but they're fairly small. I mean, the reality is this is like a size 2 hook in it individually. So I've got a lot of give. I don't want this bait to get lost when I get a big fish at the back of the bait and he's got this heavy body. So that's a really big deal. And the more you throw a deep diving crankbait, the more you'll understand how important it is to have that flex in that rod. If you get down to some of these lakes like we're at Fork or Falcon or Rayburn or Toledo, or even some of the Tennessee River lakes, man, them big fish will throw this crankbait. You can throw these so far. And that's another thing, is this fiberglass rod absolutely loads up. If you guys, if you can zoom in on the tip of that rod, this rod, I mean, you can see the bend in top, and it allows you to throw that bait a long ways. Like I said, I'm throwing 15-pound line. I throw 6-to-1 reels. One of the most important things about deep cranking, and I always joke around and tell everybody this: if you ain't banging, you ain't bassing. And the reason I say that is this crankbait's not deflecting off of stuff. You're probably not going to get bit. in the summer, fish like to suspend, and they get on everything and they suspend. They get on brush piles, they get on timber, and they get on all this other stuff. They also just get out in the water column and suspend. And a lot of people will opt to a deep diving crankbait when they see fish suspending. I don't think that that's the best thing to do. I personally believe that this crankbait, the way this crankbait goes, is just kind of like this underwater. It goes side to side, and when it hits something and when it deflects off of something, it sends this bait almost into a panic mode, and that gets a whole lot of your strikes, especially when you're fishing lakes with timber. That can be the key. I'm going to make as long of a cast as I can. If I'm fishing off of a deep stretch, I'm going to keep the high spot. Let's say that I'm fishing a point and I want to come across the point. I'm not coming down the point. I want to come across it. I see the fish grouped up. I know I need to be here and I need to be throwing across the point to where that crankbait's coming here and it's coming up and they're sitting here, and it's kind of like when you're standing in the hallway and your wife walks around the corner and you're scared. It's the same deal. So I want this crankbait banging stuff constantly. So I'm going to make really long casts, at least twice as far as what I'm trying to hit. I'm going to put my rod tip all the way down. If I'm throwing a crankbait like this C25, now this thing right here is going to get down about 25 foot of water on a good cast, okay? If I take this is a 711 medium heavy fiberglass rod, 15-pound line, I'm going to throw this as far as I can, and it's going to get to the bottom. Now, that being said, I'm not always going to stick my rod all the way down in the water with a bait this big. But if I'm not hitting bottom, the next cast that I make, I'm going to stick this rod all the way in the water. I want this bait coming into contact with as much structure and cover as possible to create a reaction strike. Now, my other thing on why a big crankbait is such a big deal, in my opinion, a big bass that's laying down there has the opportunity to pass up a jig. He has the opportunity to pass up a worm, a Carolina rig, that sort of thing. What I don't think that these big bass have the ability to do is pass up something that zips by them and bumps into something. I think that reaction is something that they just can't handle. And if you look at a lot of the really big tournaments that they have in the South, Falcon, again, Toledo, Rayburn, any of these lakes, a lot of these big bags and a lot of these big tournaments are won on a deep diving crankbait. So we've kind of talked about the baits that I throw. The colors that I like are pretty simple. I'm going to throw about 3 different colors. Chartreuse blueback is by far one of my very favorite colors. And 6 Cents makes this particular crankbait I'm showing you guys right here, and they do really, really well with that color. The next color is we'll call this citrus shad, but it's basically a white body with a lime green back. And that's just one of my favorite color crankbaits. Now, I'll tell you guys right now, I don't have anything with me that's going to be, well, actually I do. This is a little bit more of a translucent colored body. This actually is made by 6 Cents as well. And this is a color, I don't throw this as often, but I don't fish clear water as often. So, and then of course, my favorite color is just the shad color. Something that mimics just your typical threadfin shad right here in East Texas and all throughout.
Just to help the viewers out, if they're looking to shop for them, that's wild shad right here. Let me see that one turns out. That's wild shad. Turn that one up. That's citrus shad, and then of course chartreuse blue is chartreuse blue.
And these crankbaits that I've got tied on are actually 6 Cents crankbait. You can see on the backs of them it says 6 Cents. I've been throwing these a lot. I like them a lot. I throw a deep crankbait probably in the summer and in the winter. In the dead of winter, I'll throw these probably about 50% of the time. So this is a really good crankbait. It's a quality crankbait. The paint doesn't seem to come off of it. They put a triple grip, looks like a Mustad triple grip short shank hook on there, which is a really good hook. I don't like a long shank treble hook. So let's talk about the areas that I like to deep crank. You know, I'm going to throw this deep crank on pretty much anything that's going to be offshore that I can bang it up against. Okay, if there's a point, I've got a main lake point, I've got a creek channel swing. You know, you gotta visualize what it looks like underwater. Picture yourself driving over a bridge somewhere where you live, and you look down and you see a creek, and that creek makes this big S-bend. You know, you see the creek make an S-bend. Well, inside of that S-bend, essentially you have a point where it turns right here, and you've got deep water right here and shallow water right here. You create a point, a creek bend point somewhere. I'll throw that deep diving crankbait a lot. Humps, road beds. A road bed might be one of my very favorite things to fish with a deep diving crankbait. There's 2 different ways to fish them. Of course, you can fish down the road, you can fish across the road, and I'll throw it straight down the middle of the street and just grind Creek, lakes like that have some of these boat docks with 15, 20 foot of water on, hey, unbelievable way to catch giant bass right here. Grass lines, another big way, and something that unless you live in a body of water that's got a lot of grass, you don't think about it. But deep diving crankbaits on the edge of hydrilla or coontail or eelgrass, one of the best presentations to catch largemouth bass.
Lake Athens.
Big.
Lake Athens.
Lake Athens.
Perfect out there.
Lake Fork, when I first started guiding out at Lake Fork in 07, 08, all the south end was grass, and I'd get my boat and I'd sit. Or if I hit my trolling motor 2 foot to the right, I was in hydrilla. If I went 2 foot to the left, it was bare. And I'd take that crankbait and just parallel the edge of that grass and catch giant bass. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the retrieves. I want to show you where I put my rod. Comfort's a big deal, guys. If you're wanting to get out there and you're wanting to tussle with this dude right here all day long, you want to throw this from dusk to dawn, and you want to catch those giant bags of fish, and you want to catch you got to have the right equipment. You got to learn how to hold the rod, you got to learn how to hold the reel, and you got to learn how to make it comfortable. So I'm going to get up on the front deck of this boat and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. Okay, so I've got my crankbait out there, guys. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do before I start doing anything is I'm going to lay my line straight down on the water. Now, this might seem like not that big of a deal, but if I've got a 20-foot bow in my line and I'm worried about hitting the top of a hump or a roadbed or a high spot, that 20 foot of slack is going to matter. So I'm going to reel up the slack. I'm going to lay my line straight down the water, okay? All right, so I'm going to show you guys how I hold the rod. Now, this might not work for you. It might not be comfortable for me, but this is how it works for me. If I'm fishing it from the left side, in other words, I'm not putting my rod all the way down in the water. I'm going to tuck the butt of my rod up under here, and I'm going to full grip that reel. Whether it's like this or like this, I'm not going to have leverage here. I'm going to have all my leverage on my, I want to hold that whole reel. Versus if I'm fishing a jig or something, I might hold it like this. I'm going to get a little bit more reel, and I'm going to put it down right here, okay? Does that make sense? You guys see that? Yep. All right. Now, here's the other retrieve. When I'm really concerned about this bait getting to the bottom of the lake, and I really want that bait to get deep, I'm going to put this rod right here up under my titty. You guys see that? I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to stick this rod tip straight down in the water, and I'm going to walk straight up to the edge of my boat, and I'm going to stick my foot right there. You guys see this? All right, and I'm going to do just like this. There's a couple different ways these fish are going to bite it. A lot of times I'm going to be reeling this deal, and it's going to hit something, and I'm just not going to really know, especially if I'm using a glass rod. And so I'm reeling. Something hits it. Bam. Is that a fish? I don't know. I'm gonna turn my handle 1 or 2 more times. It's gonna turn to mush, folks. Fish do aggressively bite a crankbait. They do it a lot, especially when they're in big schools. But a lot of the times they'll just stop it, especially your bigger fish will stop it. I'm reeling my crankbait and the fish stops it. All I'm gonna do is pull straight into it. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. There is no really hard hook set for crankbait fishing. The deal is the fish are going up, they're grabbing 6 hooks. All I want to do is make sure that I get enough. All I want to do is make sure that there's enough bend in that rod to hook that fish, and that fish has got all 6 or at least a couple of those hooks in it. So another thing that's really important, guys, and I'll tell you a quick story. I was at Lake Falcon. I was with 2 good buddies of mine from high school. We've actually got this on video. I'm throwing a deep diving crankbait. I'm throwing it as far as I can, and I'm throwing a graphite rod. At the time, I wasn't throwing fiberglass, which is a huge mistake. We've already got several big fish, and I'm throwing this crankbait, and I hook a giant fish. It comes up, and it shakes its head, and it throws my crankbait, and it's huge. Yeah, I'm talking about 10, 11, 12. Who knows how big it was, because it was as far as I could cast, and it was at Lake Falcon. A few casts later, I get another one. Same size fish. It's a giant. It comes up, shakes her head, throws my crankbait. A few minutes later, I get another one. And if this last fish, this third fish, in about 10 minutes, I decide I'm going to make this sucker stay underwater. So with that being said, one of the biggest, most important factors of throwing a deep diving crankbait, especially when you're throwing these big crankbait, keep the fish underwater. Folks, you don't want that fish coming up and shaking his head with something that weighs a couple of ounces in his mouth. Especially when you've got a rod that's got a whole lot of give in it, you want to keep that fish underwater. These rods that I'm throwing are fiberglass, but they've got a lot of graphite, and they're medium heavy rods. They've got a little bone to them, a little backbone, and you can pull them and you can keep them down. But keeping that rod and keeping that fish underwater when you're reeling in this big crankbait is a really big deal. Hey guys, hope to help you a little bit with your deep diving crankbait. You know, I don't know, it's not something that you throw everywhere, but if you are in in the place. If you're at the lake or you're at a local pond and you think it's something that's going to catch them, man, I encourage you guys to get them out and throw them. It's something that, again, it's one of my very favorite techniques because it catches such big fish. And if you guys like the crankbaits that I'm throwing today and I'm talking to you guys about, hopefully later on I'll get some video of them. But go to 6centsfishing.com. Hey, and don't forget to type in that promo code, Your Lake Fork Guide, and you save a little bit of money. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time on Your Lake Fork Guide.